over a quarter of a century, Magic the Gathering has looked to myths and stories from across the world to influence and inform its own endless and compelling multiverse. But what happens when the game begins a quest to not only seek inspiration, but rather to tap directly into the fairy tales and legends that define the very language of Western fantasy? Will the latest set, Throne of Eldraine, live on forever as a legend itself, or will it become a cautionary tale of grim proportions? Welcome to Magic the Flavouring, the Magic podcast where we talk about all things Magic flavour, lore and design. My name is Andy Mann, I'm your host.
Hello, I'm Nathan Cantor.
And yeah, we're talking about Throne of Eldraine today. So Throne of Eldraine has been the latest release set. It's been out for, I'd say, about a month and a half now.
Yeah.
Yep, so we've had time to digest all the lore. It is the most deeply lawful of the sets in recent memory, I'm going to say.
Yeah. In terms of inspiration, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot to talk about. Almost every card has a bit of a backstory to it. But before we get on to that, I have a bit of a bone to pick with you, Nathan. I'm not going to lie. So for those of you listening at home, you might not know, me and Nathan play a lot of Magic against each other. And
just a bit, yeah.
Just a bit. And over the years, there's been a bit of resentment built up, where I have a bit of a hair trigger whenever Nathan does something that's simultaneously fantastic and also terrible for me at the same time, and it kind of compounds things when they are both. So, playing Commander,
Yep.
My board state is pretty solid. I have an Alenda the Duskrose on the table. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, okay. So I have Alenda the Duskrose, which is the black-white legendary from Rivals of Ixalan, the vampire. You, on your side of the board, you have what's currently a Profane Procession, which is the black-white enchantment from Ixalan, like the first block from Ixalan. So, you steal my Alenda underneath the Profane Procession. You exile it, so that is now under there. Not flipped yet. The game goes on. You then flip the Profane Procession into the Tomb of the Duskrose, and then handily
get to resurrect her.
You get to handily resurrect my Alenda, and then use her against me. And eventually it gets sacked, creates vampires, which you then also use against me as well.
I don't even have a version of her in the deck.
No, you don't. Now, the most annoying thing is it's annoying that you stole my legendary creature.
I've never
it was in my
this
Queen
Marchesa. I steal things from you.
It's in my Queen Marchesa Aristocrats deck, so obviously it's got a lot of utility there. But you steal it with a card that's not only from the same set, but is directly related. And then, even though you infuriatingly use it against me with the two...
in a much more flavourful fashion.
Because Alenda going with her procession of vampires into the Tomb of the Duskrose, and then emerging from the Tomb of the Duskrose to then turn against her original allies in disgust and disdain is exactly her story arc during the Ixalan block story, and even before it.
Yeah, plays like that you can skip lunch. They're just that tasty.
That was
just fill your belly.
I mean, it was infuriating from a gameplay point of view, but it was beautiful from a flavour point of view, which just made it more infuriating to me. So
I was expecting it to be worse than that. That's not too bad.
Well, there are plenty of stories. I will be tapping into many a story, which I sit there fuming, but then I can't be mad. Yeah. Because it's just so delicious.
It's the correct play. Yeah.
I'm actually getting a little bit aggy talking about it now, so I think we're going to move on. But yeah, trust me, guys, there will be many different times where we'll
inflict flavour wins upon your opponents, even if they're your friends.
Yeah, great, and then you won't have any friends left. Anyway, we're going to be moving swiftly on to Throne of Eldraine. So Throne of Eldraine comes off the back of War of the Spark. It kind of rounds off the Oath of the Gatewatch stories, and is a brand new plane, never been there before, and it dives into a completely new story arc.
Yeah, it's supposed to be the beginning of a new arc, like the Bolas arc is obviously over with the end of War of Spark. It's reached a culmination, a very hopefully distinctive end for the foreseeable future. And yeah, we're at the beginning of what is supposed to be a grand arc. So we're not entirely sure. I mean, there's a fair few notes that you could look at in the set, but we're not entirely sure exactly which direction that grand arc is going, who it's going to be following. But we know that at least some, if not all of the characters that we've seen, especially the Planeswalkers, are probably going to have stories going forwards as well. So
yeah, absolutely.
It's the genesis of the new age.
Yeah, sure. And the whole flavour, the whole high concept for the set is that is Arthurian legends meets Grimm's fairy tale. And I've got to start, this is where my starting point was with this set when we kind of came across that different flavour. I was actually a little bit worried about it. I'm not going to lie to you. I love Arthurian legends. I I'm an Englishman, you're an Englishman. This is our folklore.
This is our ballpark.
Yeah, it comes from like medieval folklore surrounding the kings and queens
These are
of the
things
time.
that we grew up on, and if you have parents like mine who are a little bit more country folk, then these are the kind of stories that you grow up on anyway, and you have like deeply seated in most of your childhood. Obviously, Shrek did a big thing of publicising it internationally.
Yeah, sure. And Magic has a habit of doing this thing as well, where they'll take a sort of a world culture, or they'll take a country which they know has maybe an older culture. So they did Theros, they did ancient Greece.
Yeah.
Egypt is obviously Amonkhet, the ancient Egyptian stuff. They did Indian culture and sort of Indian ancient traditions with Kaladesh, to varying degrees of success.
Yeah, that's arguable.
That's
more religious based, so you kind of have to be careful because it could step on like the modern sense.
They didn't get the best reaction from that, I don't think. No. But they tend to do two things with these sets. They either tend to rely very heavily on just what they have to work with. So Theros, for example, they didn't need another concept to blend that with.
It was wide enough.
The Pantheon of Gods kind of carried itself. Yeah. With Kaladesh, I think they tried to marry it up with steampunk as the high concept, which, I mean, it kind of worked.
It worked. Like visually, it was beautiful. It was really, really pretty set.
And I thought that with Arthurian legends, we know Arthurian legends, they obviously permeate into a lot of Western culture, the idea of knights and castles, even though if that's not necessarily what proper Arthurian legends really touch on, the elements are there which carried on. But I wouldn't say that there's enough that's widely recognisable to have that be the whole set carried forward.
I don't think many people have seen the Monty Python, The Holy Grail.
No, well, yeah, there's
they
that.
They should have, because it's absolutely hilarious. But is that just a little bit more obscure?
Yeah,
like it's not mainstream.
Like a lot of it is now translated to high fantasy. But I think Arthurian Legends has more of a earthbound, more of a grounded sort of attitude towards it. Arthurian Legends, I don't want to get too deep into just talking about Arthurian Legend, but it came at a time where the old pagan ways kind of were at odds with the new Christianity coming into this part of the world.
That difference between like modern structured organized religion and then the previous shamanic kind of
sure things. And there are touches of magic and there are touches of the kind of other, but Arthurian Legends were, at least for the most part, a bit more grounded than say super high fantasy that permeates Western culture. And maybe the bits
that people know about of probably the things like that have been translated into Disney products over the years, like Black Cauldron's obviously a thing. Sword in the Stone is also a thing. And if we're looking at some of the representations of the other side of this set's flavour, the Grimm fairy tales, again they play into this into the modern culture aspect, like the thing that we see and we recognise. And Disney again has taken a lot of the Grimm fairy tales and translated them into animated cartoons, and now moving into live action. But again, it's that same thing of how you need a port of being recognisable.
But this is why I was a little bit anxious, because this is our folklore, the Arthurian side of it, and I was worried that what they chose to marry it up with, which I think was a smart move, they didn't just use it on its own, as I was saying, but I thought that they were going to maybe match it up with another high concept, maybe something like the steampunk aesthetic of Kaladesh or whatever else.
Or they could have flexed more, like I guess Dominaria always had a hint of that high fantasy. And maybe they got the feedback, they knew that people liked that, and so they pushed it to more. But yeah, it's not necessarily enough to do by itself.
No, but this is why I was worried, because the other half which they chose to marry it up with is Grimm's fairy tales.
Yeah.
Now, being English, and therefore British, and therefore European, we are in not a unique space, but in a good position to be very comfortable and very recognised with the original Arthurian legends and the original Grimm's fairy tales.
Understanding that it didn't necessarily come from this super cutesy direction.
No,
we know the dark,
but we also know that they don't necessarily come from the same space.
No.
And that marrying them up and to be like, oh, it's this meets this, these two things that are very similar but also very different. I was worried that neither of them were going to get the lip service they deserved because they're not the same.
Yeah.
And this was my worry, kind of going in forwards, that they were just going to go high fantasy, fairy tale tropes, Arthur and all that, and I was like, it's not the same.
See, I think I didn't have that concern going into the set because I knew that they could pull off the knight theme quite well. Again, off the back of Dominaria, we've seen them hint at the lore of past sets, so that I knew was going to be okay. The other thing is obviously Lorwyn that came out, 12, 13 years previous, already tried to do the fairy tale thing, not quite so on the nose. It was more thematic. It was more world building. It was less specific cards, specific tropes, and it didn't go over particularly well. It was considered to be maybe a bit too childish, a bit too. I mean, I this is the set that I grew up with, so it was one of my favourites. So my concern wasn't that they weren't going to be able to do it, not that they weren't going to be able to do it justice, but more that they might not push enough because they've already tried it once and it didn't work the last time. Mm-hmm. But it kind of gave me faith that knowing that they can do the night side of things as a good bit of filler, and if they can get some flavour side of it, and Finding Arthur's a fantastic way of doing that, and then they can take the hugely storyline and lore depth of the Grimm fairy tales and ground it more in gameplay that people want to actually engage with, instead of it just being nice QC artwork and that kind of thing. That probably actually creates a really nice space in the middle to go, well, these are definitely two sides of things that don't have a complete part. So it might have been that they wanted to build these two sets individually, and these two themes have been big themes that they know they want to do. They know there's been a surge to go back to Lorwyn, and they know that knights sell. They know that theme sells. So it might have actually been quite an easy an ergonomic process for them just to go, actually, let's just put these two together. So I wasn't necessarily concerned on the delivery of the set. I think I was concerned that there was going to be maybe a bit of a disjointment between the two, which I still think you can kind of see. And I think they kind of played that well because they separate the set into the courts and the wilds. Yeah. So you kind of do get a separation on those two tropes because they fall on one side or another for the most part.
Well, this is where I actually started to change my tune the further we got into it, is those two sides, is that they didn't try to just mush them together like how they have done with other sets where they take two high concepts, they blend them into its own magic thing.
Everything becomes the same kind
they did keep them separate. And the article with the lead set designer, Cynthia Shepherd, on the Mothership, on the WotC website, she talks about how the two halves of the design team, one of them was trying to push more the Arthurian legend, the other one was trying to push more of the fairy tales, and that actual conflict of trying to blend these two different things is what the set became. I think they've wanted to do the Arthur set for quite a while. We'll just kind of talk about Will and Rowan Kenrith. These two characters were already in a set in Battle Bond.
Yeah, exactly. I think they already knew that they had these characters in their mind, and when they were doing the partner mechanics, they were thinking, well, can we do partner planeswalkers? And they already had Will and Rowan in set up to be characters in the future, so they decided, well, okay, it's a supplemental set, let's drop them in.
So yeah, these characters of Will and Rowan Kenrith, this idea of doing the Arthur set even became before Battle Bond. Yeah, 100%. So that idea of having these two different halves actually be at odds with each other made them almost have their cake and eat it, which I quite enjoy.
Because you have two different sides both fighting to create something evocative and something relatable, which was really good. Because if you get two teams both fighting in the same direction, it's great. It's great to have that little bit of competitiveness. Yeah, and you don't see too much strife in the set, and there might have been some conflict, but we don't necessarily see that in the cards. And I think there's enough fusion and there's enough blending across that it works quite nicely. Yeah,
sure. So the concept, I think, is definitely solid. I mean, you touched upon that they've already treaded this area with two different planes. They've got Dominaria, which was obviously the high fantasy.
Yeah, Benalia kind of has a lot of resonance to
knights and castles
that we have in Eldraine.
And obviously Dominaria's got almost every creature type under the sun, so they can afford to do that. And the other one, of course, and this is the one which actually people thought for a while, there was a little idea that this actually may be a Return to set, and it was Return to Lorwyn.
Yeah, I'm disappointed they didn't. The thing with Lorwyn was they did a 4-set paradigm, because they did 2 sets of the light side and 2 sets of the dark side. The idea in Lorwyn being that there is this natural process called the Aurora that works almost like in a day-night cycle, almost like how the werewolves in Innistrad had transformed. Yeah. The plane has transformed. Yeah. So you had Lorwyn, which is the nice, bright, lovely side of it, and then you had Shadowmoor, which was the dark, evil side of it. And it's funny because you look at they separated those two qualities apart from each other, which made each set very distinctive. But sure. If you don't like that kind of thing, you're really not going to like that because the whole set is doing that.
Sure, but they've paralleled that with this set, though,
but they've also combined the two together. They've got the light side, the whimsical fae, but you've also got the kind of the dark, more twisted side all together in the same set. So if you like the cutesy side of things, then you've got something in the set. If you like the dark, grim, to make the pun, side of things, then you've got that as well in the set.
Yeah.
So you've got something you can lean into on either side rather than being polarized massively one way or another.
Yeah. So on the build up to the set, then this is the kind of idea that they went in with. They were very. I think Marrow even stated that this is not going to be a return to Lorwyn
and you can
set.
tell that the feel and the look of it is a little. It's way more grounded. It's way more serious, I guess is the right word. Like there was a lot of silly whimsicalness to the. I remember the goblins from Lorwyn being absolutely like crazy. Like just you had face vaulter as a card, and it's literally a goblin like vaulting off of someone's face into the artwork. Like really, really great artwork. Like some really, really good artists in the sets to build that and make it pop. But if you look at the red caps from Throne of Eldraine, they look a lot more threatening. The wilds aren't something to be taken lightly. This isn't. Like the Fae in the Grimm fairy tales weren't nice.
Yeah,
they were always instinctively trying to teach you a lesson, or punishing you for your hubris and that kind of thing. Like they're not the three little pigs. Even though that's in the set.
Yeah. So on the build up to the set, then we had various things which obviously gave away the flavour. We had the trailer, which again was another smash hit after the War of the Spark trailer. They came with the one that introduced Garrick. People knew Garrick was going to be in the set. The idea of these quite dark themes, because at this point in time we still knew that Garrick was cursed by the Chain Veil, but in the trailer we had him facing off against guards and a gingerbread person.
So what's really funny about this is I recently was watching a video and it's a YouTuber and they do a Halloween video every year.
Yeah.
And they usually watch Shrek and they give hilarious, overly negative critique of it.
Sure.
Because they can. They couldn't find number 2 or get serviceable recording for it, so they did the shorts, or the different shorts that are available.
Yeah.
And there's a horror one, like a Halloween one, where they will tell different stories. And the gingerbread one. Now go back, if you've seen the trailer for Throne of Eldraine, go back and watch the little short of Gingy from Shrek in this little Halloween short.
Okay.
And there's a lot of parallels.
There's a lot of parallels.
It is always very directly.
But then how much can you do with gingerbread people?
But what I think is
fantasy?
funny is that it must have come out beforehand, and I'm not saying that they directly stole the idea, because if they don't,
well, yeah, you better not be.
No, but it's funny because I hadn't. It almost they must have seen that and taken inspiration and gone, let's do that, because the trailer doesn't actually have any relevance to anything in the set particularly.
No,
it's not got that voiceover that it normally has, like of Liliana when she was on not Shadows of Innistrad, the Eldritch Moon, when she's talking about how, like, you've come to me for help because necromancy is the only thing that can help.
Yeah, but they've changed up the style of the trailers completely.
Yeah,
haven't they?
War of the Spark didn't have a voiceover either, but it told the story very succinctly.
Yeah, I think that's a massive step forward.
Kind of had nothing to do with the actual set.
No, it didn't, but it got people hyped, and it also put paid
great.
to the theories that it wasn't going to be a Lorwyn set. No, they were going to do the Grimm's fairy tales.
And it also showed you could ham someone like Garrick into the set, which everyone wanted anyway. Obviously, there was a big talk about who are going to be the other planeswalkers, because Marrow's typically very circumnavigatory when he answers questions.
Sure. But there was a lot of mislead leading up to this set, I think, in general. There was the leaked media invite at San Diego Comic-Con just before the set release.
To the Thrones of Eldraine.
Yeah, so this was after they said explicitly, no, it's not Lorwyn, no, it's not going to be fairy tribal, and then this invite came out
there was fairies on it.
with a bunch of fairies on it, and it was just like, okay, so what is going on? And people kind of knew Garrick was already going to be in the set. Yeah. People already kind of knew the Kenrith twins were going to be coming back.
Yeah, but the details of such and the way that things kept getting said made people jump to a lot of conclusions, which obviously the internet's going to do. There's no way to stop people from doing that. But it showed that there was a lot of people looking to the set. There was a lot of eyes. There was a lot of scrutiny. People wanted. Clearly, people liked the ideas that they were getting presented with, because they had a lot to say about it.
Yeah, sure.
And it's quite nice for them to say for years and years and years, yes, Garrick is coming back, yes, Garrick is coming back. You get the set that clearly is going to have this idea of a big bad wolf trope, and of course Garrick's got to be there, he's the huntsman.
Yeah,
and he is. Yeah. And they managed to deliver on that, which is good.
Absolutely. Well, we'll get on to our kind of general positives in a moment. I do want to talk about, briefly, we're not going to go too deep into it. That's probably going to be its own show entirely. But the introduction of the new way of delivering Magic story kind of came around with this set.
Yes, another different way of delivering
different way, sure. But I think this is actually now, for me personally, I think this is the right way. So for those of you that don't necessarily keep up too much with how they delivered Magic story, in the last set, War of the Spark, they had 2 accompanying novels. At this time, War of the Spark's been released, and then Forsaken is yet to be released. But they did them as standalone novels, short novels. that you had to buy either physically or on the Kindle store. And then there was a peppering of stories by Django Wexler, which were on a subscribed service that you could access through the mothership, but weren't on the mothership directly.
Yeah, had little excerpts from the chapters and maybe little extensions.
Yeah, so this is how they were doing the story for the last set, which was already a change-up.
Yeah.
But I think there was a bit of a backlash for that. People weren't horrendously happy with having to buy a physical book. They were quite
novels
hard.
have historically not been received very well, nor sell very well. So it's a poor media platform for Wizards, just from data point of view.
But they have stuck with having a short novel. They've just changed the way they've delivered it. So the lead up to this is that we have a Throne of Eldraine novel, The Wilded Quest, written by Kate Elliott, who also did the stories for Core Set 19 with the Nicol Bolas stories, which were incredible and very well received, and so she was a perfect choice.
The best Core Set storyline.
Oh yeah, 100%. More than
the only Core Set storylines, but
yeah. Well, I mean, the fact that it was the only one and they absolutely smashed it. It was fantastic.
With the sets around it.
So this is now what they're saying they're going to be doing from now on. They will probably still do ancillary storyline things, like we are still waiting for the second War of the Spark novel, Forsaken, and that will still be
just after the events of the set.
Yeah, so they're
aftermath.
Yeah, they're still going to be they're rounding that off. But this is now the format where you buy. It's either mostly going to be Kindle books. I think there was going to release physical books. I can't quite remember. But essentially, it's going to be a small fee. It's not going to be free anymore like it was when they had MTG Story on the mothership. But it's like £3.50. I think I paid for my Kindle book, and they're short novels. They're not quite novellas. They're not full novels. They're short novels, and they tell the story with professional writers of the set, without you having to necessarily kind of tune in each week as they release it on the mothership.
Yeah, and it's not like different voices trying to create one.
Which I think is a real good step forward.
Yeah,
I will miss having the lead up to like the episodic nature of jumping in each week, and I do think it's a bit of a shame that people like Alison Lurs and other people on the creative team won't necessarily get the chance, at least seemingly now, won't necessarily get the chance to flex their muscles because. Like they kept Magic's story going for so long.
Like the consistency element's obviously a big factor because it's easier to guarantee the consistency, but it's going to be again harder to guarantee the quality, and then also the reception. Like if people typically do not buy books, going back to I mean, yes, there's Kindles and there's online ports available, but it still might not be the way that people want to digest the story.
Absolutely.
The week by week, it only takes 20 minutes out of your day on your bus ride to work or to school or whatever.
It is a little bit of effort, but I do think it's worth it.
I think it's worth it because I think that the way that, especially going back to the War of the Spark novel, like that was the Gathering Storm, which didn't get released in novella, got released in chapters, is because it's a one succinct writer doing what they want to do with it, has such a better delivery. Like the characterization, the dialogue, the general expression of the world that we play, like the Magic the Gathering universe, was really, really good. And sometimes if you do chapter by chapter, week by week, some are very hit and miss. And if your character gets served an injustice and that's what you hear from them for the next 2 years, it can be quite irksome.
Sure. I mean, I think there are issues with how they've married up, at least this time around, how they've married up the Wilded Quest with the actual story in the cards and the characters used. I mean, that's a rant for later on. We will get to that. But I think we should just jump into essentially what we think the general positives are. Just as a little kind of disclaimer for the Wilded Quest, we're not going to be doing a deep story dive. However, we're not going to be shy about spoilers. Yeah. If you listen to this episode, I do still believe it is worth going and reading the Wilded Quest. It is 100%. Fantastic. But we are going to be talking about specific story points, things that happen in the book in relation to the cards. So if you don't want to know and you want to read, stop the podcast now. Go read it. It will take you like a day, I think, and then you can come back, listen to the rest of this podcast, and then join us in the conversation. But for now, let's get on to what we loved about the set, because I think there is a lot. I think, for me personally, there's more to love about this set than there isn't, and that's coming from a mind of knowing that this is a polarizing set for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think we've come off the back of an absolute inundation of new, not necessarily new abilities and new mechanics, but like the War of the Spark was a really dense set.
Yeah,
really,
hugely
really
dense.
Had a lot going for it. It was very bold. It was very punchy, and obviously it had a lot of gravity because we've been building up this story arc.
Well, like a decade's worth of storyline.
You had so many. You had planeswalkers out in the wild. So every pack had a planeswalker, and it's not that you get fatigue from having a set that's so full on. But there was definitely always the climax of an arc is always going to feel like it has more gravity than the beginning of a new arc. But at the same time, I prefer the beginning of a book to the end of the book.
Right.
So much more, because you're opening into a new world. It's much softer. It's a little bit more gradual. Not everything is a punch in the face.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's just I just hold my hand, we'll just walk out the door.
But then
that's quite nice.
The way that they grab you then with this set is by giving it its own huge sense of style, which is one of the biggest things I love about this set. Is that all right? Yep. At a glance, it might look a little bit like Lorwyn, it might look a little bit like Dominaria, but actually, as soon as you spend any time with the cards, you realise this is its own thing entirely. And the first thing that grabbed it for me was the art design.
Yeah, the art design.
Now, a lot of people, it's phenomenal. A lot of people, I think it's safe to say, thought that this was going to be Seb McKinnon the set, Seb McKinnon the Gathering, and a lot of the spoiler artwork was from Seb McKinnon. A lot of the showcases are from Seb McKinnon. We'll get onto those in a minute. They're another absolute home run for this set. But yeah, they have obviously really stepped up their art game with this. I mean, there's a problem, I think, in previous sets. I mean, I don't know if I think you agree, where a lot of the art has become a little bit homogenized.
Yeah, there was no singular identity.
Still great, still fantastic, but every card, every set kind of started to look a little bit like the same kind of a thing, or at least the same. The art directors are like,
hard now.
you
We've got
have to look
digital
like this.
artists, and it's a lot easier for your personal style to get lost a little.
Yeah, whereas this set, they've really, really thought about almost each individual card, the requirements for it, the artists that they've used. Yeah. They've really selected a lot of good artists.
Presentation's been really important for this set,
and I'm glad actually. We noticed this. We were talking today just before the show, looking through all the different cards. It isn't just the big guys, the ones that we all love, like Nils Harm, Seb McKinnon, Therese Nielsen. I don't know. Does Therese Nielsen even have an artwork in this set?
I mean, that's a question we should have already asked before recording.
Well, that's fine. like you look alike. But I mean, we have other artists which I don't believe have had much legroom, like Sean Wood, who did the showcase card for Giant Killer. He absolutely smashed it. They've brought in a lot of different artists that I think have obviously had the same art direction and have sort of said, like, look at Nils, look at Seb, see what they're doing, and not emulate it, but definitely be in their world. And the art direction is just chef kiss. It's just so brilliant. You look at every single card, and it just blows you away with the story that it's telling. And not all the artworks are necessarily that obvious either. I think is it Beloved Princess is the white card. So you look at that artwork and it's not just all in your face rich, narrative inside the card. It takes you a while to digest because artworks like that, there are so many tiny details.
The layering in it's fantastic.
The layering in it's fantastic. It doesn't just go boom, this is the big focal point of the card. Each one of the bits of artwork kind of invites you to have a little look and to uncover the story of each thing that it's telling you. Can you see any Therese Nielsen artworks in the set? No, which is, you'd think that they would...
She might be... Well, we don't know what the next set is. Well, we do. Theros.
Well, yeah, Theros is the next set.
So she might have been, like a lot of these artists work on commission. Obviously, they might have other things that they're doing. Noah Bradley obviously was massively influential for Dominaria, doing a lot of the legendary sorceries and stuff like that. So I think sometimes they might just go, okay, right, have some time off.
Sure, but look, far be it from me to suggest that art directors for any Magic the Gathering set aren't looking at it as a big picture.
Yeah.
Because that's obviously not true. They have to. It's their job.
Absolutely.
But I do definitely see an uppick with this set that they didn't just go, well, we want this artist to do one great bit of artwork for this card because we know they're popular.
They wanted everything to feel like it was one.
Every single piece. And it just, but it's a world that's not homogenized. Every bit of artwork has the artwork that is required for it.
Yeah, you could maybe say that you look at the comparison between Eldraine and Lorwyn was a lot brighter, a lot bolder, thicker lines, sharper hues and that kind of thing. And you look at this set and everything's softer, everything's more realistic, and that doesn't mean that it's less evocative. If anything, it makes it more evocative because it's a little bit more believable. Like cartoony is really, really good to be bold like that. I mean, realistically, if they did like a lot of people had backlash for the Japanese Altars of the Planeswalkers because they weren't as much as I absolutely love manga. I absolutely love Japanese
I agree.
art style, but some people don't because it doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel like some that it
doesn't feel like a magic.
Yeah, also, the fact that we're very used to a certain type of visualization and a certain interpretation. It was nice to see what would happen if you did give people a bit more flexibility on how they show like a basic human shape. Like, are they going to be over accentuated on any of the facial features, anything like that? Most of it these days is grounded way more in reality.
Yeah.
And I think it goes back a little bit further than just Eldraine. Like, you look at how the Golgari swarm were handled just now in Ravnica. Guilds of Ravnica?
Guilds of Ravnica.
Guilds of Ravnica. They had a similar standardized art style, which made them feel very identifiable.
Sure. Well, that was Magali Villeneuve.
Exactly.
I always pronounce her surname wrongly, but yeah, she was lead design for the Golgari specifically.
Exactly.
She also did a bit of work on the Orzhov.
And if you look at that set, and Ravnica Allegiance, they had very specific identity, and you could tell, like, the art style. You could tell it was a world building. It's not just filling in all the artworks and all the different gaps that you need. It's actually building a world that you can engage with better, and especially when you are trying to fuse these two tropes together. That was really important, and that's maybe where your incredulity of whether or not they'll be able to pull it off. That's probably where it abated, because then you see that actually they've managed to create this world.
100%.
Hand in hand. Works them both together without feeling forced, without feeling disjointed.
And it really didn't feel forced as well. I still do think the Arthurian Legends took a little bit of a backseat.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the fault on the part of Wizards and their design team. I think that's just because people recognise the fairy tales more.
I think you naturally have so much more you can do. In fact, we're going to talk about it in a little bit, but you have entire card clusters based around certain stories and tropes. So it's...
So the world building,
there's only so much you can
in general,
do with knights, you know. Yeah. There's only so many different types of knight you can do before they all just start to feel like, wow, it's a little bit knighty. It's like allies were in Zendikar. Like, you could barely sometimes tell which ones were allies and which weren't, because they just tacked it on willy nilly. Whereas this feels way more deliberate.
Absolutely,
but it's also not necessarily going to have a significant amount of diversity.
Sure. So world building in general is fantastic, and not just from an art design point of view, not just from a storytelling point of view in terms of the pure story, but things like they added in 2 new card types.
Yeah.
Peasant and noble, and they've
creature types.
Creature types. Yeah. Oh, sorry, creature types. They've added new creature types, peasant and noble, which might not. There's no peasant decks, right? No. There's not even. I mean, you could argue there are noble decks, but that's just aristocrats. But they didn't do it as a mechanic. They did it because
it fit. It fit the flavor.
Fit the flavor.
Yeah, because it didn't necessarily make sense to have advisor or because you don't have king. Like, obviously, all the kings in the past have never had a specific.
No, it's not
class.
Yeah, it's not like Queen Marchesa.
Yeah, and if you're talking about classes don't mean like it's almost like knights and soldiers are jobs. They're not classes,
right?
Whereas class would be: are you a noble? Are you a peasant? I mean, if we're talking literally in terms of what the word means, like you'll be talking: are you rich or poor? And that might be much more of an important in terms of defining how the characters in these sets work than saying whether they're the job class, whether they're a shaman or a druid. And they also added in warlock.
Oh, they did. Yes, no, I missed that one. Warlock.
So you can tell that it's hard because when they made the Naga, there was a massive backlash of, well, why do you have to make a separate sub snake class when that snakes are already?
Why did you bring up the Naga?
I know. I'm sorry. I know it's annoying you, but it's funny because the Naga is the creature type rather than the class, and obviously they're adding classes in. So humans, I know. I'm sorry. I've woken the beast.
There's snakes.
So if you look at the class title, I mean, it's better to. They're not adding new creature types because creature types are fine. You can add the Trilobite or whatever it was from Dominaria.
Yeah.
The Shorekeeper.
Yeah.
You can add that in, and it might feel a bit weird because you're adding this whole new creature type that has no support. But adding class typing is great because it creates diversity within the creature types. And when I was saying about how earlier, if they're all knights, it feels a little bit like samey. Well, they've gone, well, yeah, okay, there's a lot more knights, but let's give you 3 new different, especially like human-based class types. Yeah. You know, I don't think there are many outside of the humans that are nobles, warlocks, or peasants.
A Yara.
Yeah, not many.
First of Lothlorien. Yeah, not many. Yeah, sure. But then, actually, there aren't a huge amount of non-human creatures in this. It's not like Lorwyn, for example, which had no humans in it. Like, humans do... Exactly. Well,
humans
are relevant.
They had the Kithkin instead.
They're not humans.
No, exactly. That's what I mean. That was the...
Oh, right.
They were the Hobbit. They were the Hobbit trope.
One new card type... it was not card type, but one new word... Subtype, thank you, that they've added in, which has... become quite relevant is food, not a creature type ginger brute.
Yeah, but it is though.
It's an artifact type that comes from the top.
If you name a creature type and you name food, does it count for ginger brute?
No, because the way they formatted it is that it's the artifact creature food golem. That's how that's formatted.
Yeah. You could argue
you can't be artifact food
You could argue
creature
that the Royal
golem.
Scions, only one half of the card is Rowan and only one half of the card is Will. So
Look, it's an artifact type. You if I have to accept that Nagas aren't snakes, you have to accept that food isn't a creature type. Otherwise, changelings are food, and if you get into that, if you go down that road, you can say that anything is food because anything can be eaten by something else.
Anything's food if you're brave enough.
No, right? No,
it really is. It really is. You can eat anything's edible if you chew it.
My point is with the food is that for me,
out of all the cards to be food, that aren't
out of all the mechanics and all the different card things that they've brought in, all the different subtypes, this one is actually the most flavorful.
I do, yeah.
On my top 5 flavor picks for this set, I didn't realize this, but more than enough of them are to do exactly with food.
Yeah.
As far as mechanics go, there are a few new ones. You have Adamant is one of them.
Yeah, I think that's like the idea that this is less of a flavour thing now. I think this is more of it shows that the knights are striving, they're achieving, because the idea of the set is that the knights go out questing, 5 different courts of questing, and the wilds usually present the challenge, because they usually have to go out questing into the wilds to go and get a relic.
Yeah, each one of the courts are based around a single colour.
Yeah, and so I think the idea is they wanted to push that more mechanically and more in terms of the Mel side rather than the Vorthos side. They want to push monocolour and give it some payoff, especially in draft, and is limited especially. It's quite nice to be able to lean more into going mono green, and there is more increase. There's a few more artifacts. And stuff like
and
that
it's absolutely nothing to do with the fact that they're going to Theros next and Devotion's making a return.
Ooh, well, we technically don't know through a leak that's confirmed. No, absolutely, you're right.
Oh, yeah, let's not go on to those leaks. But I don't think the mechanics in this set, I would argue, aren't necessarily as impactful flavour-wise as the rest of the
it's not. Yeah,
design.
It's a top-down set rather than a bottom-up set. They want to. They know the characters they want to present, and then they build the cards around them, rather than knowing what they want the set to be defined by mechanically, and then giving the characters to them based on what they feel they suit.
Sure. So we were speaking about the fact that the storyline isn't necessarily told just through the book, and it's actually not even just told around through individual cards. So for a few previous sets, especially things like War of the Spark, they had story spotlight cards. They had these in Dominaria as well, where there were individual cards that had a scene on them that was pertinent to the story. So for people who weren't necessarily keeping up with the weekly MTG stories or really cared too much about the storyline behind the cards, they could still pick out 10 or 12 spotlights and go, this happens, this happens.
The cards in the set that were basically going, by the way, this is what the set's about, this is what's happening, this is the boss dying.
Yeah, sure. You know? But for this set, they've not done that.
No, they haven't highlighted them specifically.
Because the whole set is about telling stories. Exactly. And the whole set is about the Grimm's fairy tales coming through. So they have had these clusters of cards. So I mean,
they're a little bit more representational.
Sure. So I mean, a big one that's easily possible, for example, is the storyline of Jack and the Beanstalk. That's told through multiple different cards, but there's 3 specifically that kind of sequence off of each other. Mm-hmm. So you have Bartered Cow, which is an ox creature, and on the card art it is Jack literally bartering his cow away for magic beans.
The swing being that the cow's actually a transformed
human.
The
flavour text is, at the market, no one heeded Hilda's frantic mooing. The fey curse was turning out even worse than she had feared.
Yeah, which puts that little extra...
Pretty dark.
But it puts that extra little bit of mischievousness, that little bit more of a wickedness on it. That I think maybe we've eked out of the stories that we tell our children.
Yeah, that moves on to Giant Opportunity, which is a green sorcery. They look tasty, but best to plant them. So it's the idea that maybe Jack will eat the beans, and then in Tall as a Beanstalk, the green aura, we have the figure of someone with beanstalk limbs that is as tall as a giant.
Yeah, so clearly he's, instead of planting them, has eaten them instead.
He realised a bit too late that he was supposed to plant the magic beans.
Yeah.
So they're telling these stories, and
then you've got Giant Killer as well, which
you
shows
do have Giant Killer,
the aftermath of that Jack and the Beanstalk story.
You have a Beanstalk Giant. You do have the tropes coming in, but they do have they're getting bold of the idea of they're telling a lot of stories. This did come off the back of War of the Spark. I feel there were these little story moments in War of the Spark.
Well, the problem with the War of the Spark ones were there were massive spoilers. Like D-Spark is a massive spoiler, and they've not done this so much. Like Happily Ever After could just be, we don't know if that's at the end of the story,
Yeah.
or we don't know if that's just a representation of when of a past achievement. You know, that it's not giving a timestamp to things.
Kenrith's transformation is another one.
Yep.
Kenrith could be any of the Kenriths.
Could be any of the Kenriths. We had we didn't touch on it earlier, but there was a massive mislead going in that that Rowan was looking for Will because he was in any of the initial promotional artwork.
Yeah, so a lot of the promotional artwork was just Rowan.
Yeah,
right?
and there's this idea of the female protagonists taking the lead, and I think that's a good idea. But I mean, it was misleading because it's Kenrith, their father, that's missing, and you wouldn't necessarily know from the card if it had been spoiled or leaked a bit too early, like things are prone to be done anyway. So it doesn't give away too much.
Yeah, I think I would hedge a bet that this is what they're going to be doing moving forwards, because now they don't feel the need to be telling specific stories with the Gatewatch.
Yeah.
And even the name of the buy box promo card is Kenrith the Returned King.
Yeah.
And it's their father, whose first name isn't Kenrith. Kenrith is his surname.
Yeah, but it's the title.
But it's the title. So when they had Kenrith the Returned King, any other card which had Kenrith on it, suddenly it was like, well, is it the King Kenrith? Is it Rowan Kenrith? Is it Lyndon?
Yeah,
well,
we're also Lyndon? Further back as well. The Battle Bond twins, the twins as we see them in Battle Bond, are actually after the events of the set.
Yeah.
They're older.
Yeah, it's a jump forward.
Yeah, exactly. So they're more sure of themselves. I mean, we should have, obviously we didn't know that going in either, but had we known that, we would have known that Will would have been fine anyway. But it did create a nice little, especially when you're at the beginning of a set and you're not entirely sure. You haven't got everything laid out in some grand, like I knew about Azor being in Ixalan for like months because I paid attention to everything that was releasing, so every little leak
But you would never have guessed that with this set.
Exactly, that's the whole point, because it's the start of a new arc. They can afford to be ambiguous and it not be frustrating for players because no one knows. And like it's nice to have that whole, well, if you're paying attention, you're going to get it, and you're not like, well, they didn't try very hard on that red herring. But
I think the problem is, my issue with the if you pay attention then you'll get it thing is that they're trying to speak to a niche audience within a niche audience.
Exactly.
Like people who like MGT story so much they can get the clues within a game where most of the people are not that fussed about MGT
We'll not
story.
mind if you make the story more obvious. We're not going to be like, oh, you didn't make it so challenging for my speculation.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a nice payoff for those that want it, and I suppose it doesn't cost them anything, but I do prefer this broader style of storytelling through the cards. Because you can play out the scenarios as you play the game.
And it kind of it doesn't pigeonhole certain key points of the story either. Like I don't get me wrong, I think that not fire parting, settle the score was an annoying card to see before you've got to that part of the story. And this is why the way that they've structured their story delivery is quite good these days, because they're not doing week by week you get another chapter and you find out what happens 6 weeks after the set drops, even though you've already seen it in the cards anyway.
That's a whole discussion about releasing War of the Spark after the previous
season.
And
it was also a reason why Uncharted Realms probably got stopped, because it was retrospective or retroactive storytelling, which isn't a very good way to tell a story, because you're giving everyone the important hints without any of the fluff around it.
Yeah.
They'll make up their own nonsense and their own headcanon, and then you either confirm it and it's annoying that they could work it out so easily, or you debunk it and they're annoyed
disappointing,
that you didn't follow through on the thing that you clearly set up. So they want to be more cohesive.
And I think with this set, they've definitely done that. And if this is the style of this is the storytelling set.
Yeah.
This is the fairy tale set.
Yeah.
So it could be very feasible that they are only doing this style of storytelling in the cards and whatever. And it's the reason we're picking up on these tropes is because they're using fairy tales that are the language of our Western fantasy.
Yeah. It's little things. Well, we have two cards in this set, Once Upon a Time and Happily Ever After. They literally play off the language of how we tell stories.
So if this is if this is only for this set, then fine, and they've achieved it. But if this is what they're going to be doing moving forwards,
I think it's a good template.
That's going to be.
I think they'll feed off a lot of the. I think they'll understand a lot of the feedback from this. I don't know many people that haven't had a positive reaction to it.
I mean,
I know the gameplay is quite nice and intricate. There's not very much to dislike about it. I mean, I've even put that,
I don't know.
The
a
irony,
lot of people don't like
of
the fantasy aspect. They don't. They actually.
Well, this is the thing that
I
didn't like about the whole Lorwyn thing, of where sometimes people don't want your typical Lord of the Rings magic anymore.
Which is, I mean,
they want they want the steampunk vehicles thing.
Each to their own, right? Completely.
Yeah, of course.
100%. I went to the pre-release for Throne of Eldraine. I did my maximum amount of matches because I had nothing better to do that day, even though I was down pretty much from the start. the amount of people that I sat down across or just kind of chit-chatted to who I didn't usually engage with at our LGS, the amount of people that went, yeah, it's not really for me, the flavour, I don't really get it. I was actually quite shocked, especially coming off the back of War. Well, no, but each to their own. But the problem is that I think for a lot of people that maybe they just play limited, or maybe they just play in formats which don't necessarily rely on flavour.
And they're trying a bit, if they're pushing towards the flavour side, maybe it won't have the same kind of gravity because they won't see that sweet kitschness of a card.
But it was such a good palate cleanser. This set is, if nothing else, this set is an amazing palate cleanser after War of the Spark. After being on Ravnica for a while, after having the Gatewatch for the past 10 years, to go, no, do you know what? We're just going to do a super high fantasy set.
Well, I guess it also depends on how long the people that you were playing have been playing. Like, if you've been playing, say, as long as you have, which is now 10 years, or as long as I have, which is nearly going on, like, 20, you might see the trends that has been going on the last few sets and feel that Eldraine is a perfect breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
Which it is. It's a nice, softer, more digestible, more evocative set. It's not got such high stakes. And it works really nicely. If you're someone who's only been playing for the last 2 years and you had this big driving like momentum arc of the Bolas, and then it ends, and now you've got this soft, whimsical play, people will be like, what the hell is this? It's like, oh yeah, we've only spent 3 years getting used to a long build up of strong story arcs. You're not necessarily going to appreciate that you have lulls. There are ups and downs. There needs to be. It can't just constantly being better. And the same with power creep. You can't just keep making things bigger and bigger and better because eventually it breaks.
Sure.
You know? And one thing we didn't touch on, which I think is also interesting, is that the storyline is now... for the first time, I think, the storyline and reality are working in parallel, where you have the innocuous 3-mana Simic Planeswalker has now suddenly become a villain on standard, where in the storyline this innocuous little green blue elfy guy becomes the villain of the story. I think
talking about Oko, the main protagonist.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really nice to have that parallel in reality.
Sure, well, he's tricked everyone because he's stupid, sexy Oko.
Yeah, exactly. And no one really thought about it until it was too late.
I want to move on to our flavour picks, but before I do, we have to talk about the showcase.
Well,
cards.
One thing we haven't touched on at all yet is adventures.
Sure.
I mean, it's not technically... it is technically a mechanic because it's the way that the card works, but it's more like a separate version of, say, like Buyback or Fuse or something.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a new style of how to play the card, but yeah, no, you're right. The formatting on the card itself, I have an adventure card in front of me now. The pages of the book are present on the card, and on the left-hand page you have the sorcery or instant speed spell, and on the right side of the page you have the creature mechanics and the creature text. Yeah, brilliant. The cards literally in their own little bubble tell a full story.
I think this is the thing that sells the set more than anything else. This idea, if they want to do this with each set having a showcase mechanic or a showcase style, we're not sure what's going to be for the Theros, but there's a chance that maybe it's the return to sagas and they might do something more cutesy with the sagas. Who knows? But what I like for this one is that it's that perfect fusion of form and function, of where the card does a certain thing, and it feels like it's doing that thing. You're sending it. You're getting this little effect, this thing, while the creature goes and buggers off, does its own thing, and then later it comes back having matured.
Yeah.
And it does feel really disappointing just to play the creature without doing the adventure.
Oh, 100%. You
feel really bad. You're like, oh, you didn't even get to go and do its little thing, and you even get the little token that says, go on an adventure. It's great.
I'm already sick of people doing Bilbo Baggins though.
Yeah,
I'm going on an adventure. Yeah, great. Get a new thing.
Wow.
That does
it's
tie
almost as if magic doesn't tie directly into meme culture.
Oh Lord! We'll talk about meme culture in this set. And the showcase, however, though the new frames. Obviously, this is not the newest. Yeah. This isn't the first time they've tried to change up the magic card.
And it might be. It's actually really, really super busy, which is why I'm glad that they've done it specifically for the promotional side. Like it's not the standardized printing, because I think it would be way too busy. I think that once you understand,
really?
I think that as a format is alienating.
Sure. So we're looking currently at Lovestruck Beast. We've got the showcase card with the artwork by Tyler Walpole. So they all have alternate artworks as well, which I think's it's fine. I would have rather have had just a lot of the showcase artworks as standard.
Yeah, but that's what stops them from. Yeah, but then they're not showcase.
Yeah, okay, fair point. Fair point. I think they're great. The vine motifs going around, the vines around the set symbol,
pretty.
the pages of the book look more like a book. That's the biggest cheat for me. Actually, it wouldn't have. I don't think it would have lessened the showcase cards to have had the book pages on the normal adventures be a little bit nicer than just.
Yeah, they're basic. Yeah,
they're just very basic.
Yeah, the thing I find that's the reason why I say I think it's too busy is that it moves that one step closer towards not looking like a Magic card. And that's something that Wizards are very, very aware of.
Pulled back from the everything else that they've done, though, like the Amonkhet.
Yeah, that's the thing. Bit by bit, they've pushed. I mean, that's different because the invocations were much rarer, and they felt. I mean, I think they were deliberate. They were also deliberately obscure. The writing wasn't supposed to be clearly English that they've tried to flex. It's actually supposed to be very much hieroglyphics that, if you look properly closely, actually it's English. That was obviously a bit of a drop, and people didn't necessarily like the fact that the artwork was the least important part of it. So it clearly shows with a bit of feedback what people appreciate. In the same way here, a lot of it comes down to the framework and the border being more intricate, being more stylized, and because it looks like just a little less like a Magic card, I feel like in a normal pack, it makes it pop so much more when you go through 2 packs. If you're doing a sealed event, you go through 2 packs and you get the adventure card, and you go, well, that's a weird framing.
Yeah, sure.
And then you look into it, blah, blah, blah. And then in the 3rd pack, you get the showcase one, you go, well, that's just absolutely bonkers crazy.
I do appreciate they're in the boosters.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've got time to do top 3.
Yeah, okay, let's do top 3.
Top 3, all right. So, do you want to go first?
Absolutely, sure. Why not? So, I'm going to quickly just say a little honourable mention, because I mentioned Holy Grail earlier, and that's the Oathsworn Knight. It's a 1 black,
right?
0/0 comes into play with 4+1/+1 counters on it. If it would be dealt damage, instead prevent that damage and remove a +1/+1 counter. Representing the Black Knight from Holy Grail. I am so surprised they went this way because it's one of the few modern culture.
Monty Python's Holy Grail, yeah.
One of the few modern culture that I say modern like it's actually it's 30 years old now. But it's a modern culture example of the Arthurian legend. And he had each limb got cut off and he carried on fighting with increased tenacity to the point of he had only stumps. And he said, he turns around and says he's going to bite your kneecap off. And I thought that was amazing. They managed to squeeze in a reference to older players. Instead of just having everything being a little bit more obvious. That's a little bit more obscure, and I think it's fantastic.
Okay, cool. Is that your number 3?
That's my honourable mention.
Do your number 3?
My number 3 is Clackbridge Troll.
Clackbridge Troll.
Clackbridge Troll.
Interesting.
An 8/8 trample haste for 3 black. And when it comes into play, it gives your opponent 3/0/1 white goat tokens. And at the beginning of combat on your turn,
headphone users.
I know. I'm sorry. You'll get more goat throughout the podcast. I love goats. At the beginning of combat on your turn, your opponent can sacrifice a creature. If you do, you tap the troll, gain 3 life, and draw a card. It's kind of got the similar swing of what the old demons back in the day used to be, massively oversized creatures. Sure. That if you didn't tap or do something, you'd get a payback.
Yeah.
Instead, you're giving them the fodder, them the chance to sacrifice something. If they do, then you get something back. But it's the 3 Billy Goats gruff. It's so well done. Sure,
they have done trolls which have that motif on.
And then this feels so much more on the nose, but it feels so on the nose, but at the same time it doesn't get in the way of the card. It's enough that you when you force a trope doing a top down like this, and you put so many aspects of that of the trope into the card feels weird. It feels engaging. You look at it and you're like, bloody hell, it's an 8/8 trample haste, and then it gives you and it's like getting your mind working, and then you find the trope, and then it completely blows your mind absolutely because it's trying to incorporate so many things and doing it very well and succinctly, and that's a lot to balance in a card, and I think Clackbridge Troll does that the best.
Cool. My number 3 is one that we've mentioned before on this podcast, is Love Struck Beast. This is the Beauty and the Beast analogue. Mm-hmm. So it's 2 and a green for a Beast Noble creature, 5/5 with an adventure. The adventure sorcery is Heart's Desire for 1 green, or for a green. Create a 1/1 white human creature token, and then the creature text is Love Struck Beast can't attack unless you control a 1/1 creature. His mind chose solitude, but his heart disagreed. Lovely. It is just Beauty and the Beast. I love the fact that it can't attack unless it has a 1/1 human. Mm. If it is a 1/1 human itself, it can attack because, according to the mothership on Gatherer, it loves itself and can therefore attack.
I know. I do like when they put those little little like Easter egg.
Sure.
In the.
I mean, you can't get more on the nose than this card. I think for what it's trying to say is Beauty and the Beast all over. I mean, the showcase artwork even more so looks like the Disney Beauty and the Beast, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. One thing I will say, and this is another reason I love this set with how they've treated a lot of the fairy tales, and is a reason that I actually really dislike a few other cards, which we'll get onto. Oh boy, is the fact that they've called it Love Struck Beast, and not like Beauty and the Beast, or whatever. They haven't hit it on the head.
It's like Ginger Brute not being the gingerbread
Curious
man.
Pair instead of like, Hungry
Handsome
Twins
I
or something.
feel like some names you can't get. Like, I feel like the gingerbread man is the perfect example of a name that is just about generic enough, even though it is his title. You could have got away with it.
Sure, but they chose to go with Ginger Brute.
Calling this like oh bloody hell, what's Prince?
Charming Prince.
No, the prince that the Beast is. Oh, that's
I can't remember.
Oh, my Disney knowledge has gone out the window. That's so bad. I'm so sorry, listeners. Can't remember.
Moving on. What's your number 2?
My number 2.
Failed at Disney. You've got to go. You've got to move on.
Exactly.
Can't sit on that.
So my number 2 is a pair. That's Overwhelmed Prince and Sorcerer's Broom. Overwhelmed Apprentice. And Sorcerer's Broom.
Ah, cool.
Overwhelmed Apprentice is a single blue for a 1/2. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard, and you scry 2. Then Sorcerer's Broom is a 2 generic 2/1 artifact creature, and when it comes, whenever you sacrifice another permanent, you may pay 3 mana to create a copy of it. And these are both taken from Fantasia, which is obviously a Disney product as well. But I quite like, again,
the Disney is very close to the original.
Yes, and it's a little bit more obscure. It's not the typical Peter Pan, which I realize we haven't got Peter Pan in this, but it's not really a Grim Fairy Tale. So
it's not a Disney
set.
Fairy Tale.
That's the other thing. Like, this is not a Disney set. It just happens to be that Disney took a lot of their early inspiration from Grim Fairy Tales and built their franchise on that. Because
personally, I think people can stow their Shrek analogues. Like, yes, we get it. It's a little bit like Shrek. Yeah, move on. Exactly. It stops people appreciating the set.
Also, I guess you kind of have to have a mix between the original source material and then the current representations, your modern representations, coming all the way now to Shrek being the modern analog for fairy tales.
Sure.
But the fact that they managed to put those 2 in there, when I wouldn't necessarily think that if in your list of fairy tales you want to get in there, Fantasia wouldn't necessarily be on there. Sure. And they managed to get it in there, which is quite nice.
Cool. My number 2 is Bog Naughty. It's a 3 black creature fairy, 3/3 with flying, and it has pay 2 and a black, sacrifice a food to target creature, gets -3/-3 until end of turn. The flavor text reads, "The fairy plucked an acorn off the ground. One night's quest was about to come to a bitter end. Tales of the Fae." Now, this isn't necessarily a direct reference to a fairy tale, but I love just the whole way that this card works, and especially works with something like food. So food as a mechanic is you sacrifice a food to gain 3 life, right? That is what the token is. Yeah. The 2 mana, that's an artifact.
And investigate clue.
Sure. Kind of. So on its own, it looks like it's gaining you life. Like, it's a good thing. It's something to preserve you throughout the game. Whereas cards like this, and they've done a really good job with the Black Fairies, are using food tokens not as a savior for yourself, but as a weapon to use against someone else. Obviously, with the card art, with the idea it's the fairy flicking an acorn to kill a knight, obviously it just ties in together. Rustic Studies, Magic Man Sam, the YouTube channel, has just released a video that breaks down the Hansel and Gretel storyline specifically. Oh, nice. And he talks in depth about how this set uses food both as a weapon and as sustenance. And I just couldn't agree with more.
Yeah, I think they needed to avoid it just being attacked on. Oh, plus you get to, you've got a little life buff.
Sure.
And they've given it utility in the same way Savvy Hunter, for example, has given it some extra utility.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, they've made food feel a little bit like the energy of the set, whilst having more independent relevance, whilst also not being completely utterly parasitic.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I didn't like when they first came out was the fact it was just called food because it was too generic. But actually, the fact that it makes it generic, is what allows it to be more malleable.
Absolutely. All right, moving on.
So you're going to hate me because my third one is Seven Dwarfs.
All right, okay.
And my choice is, it's funny because you read out the entire cards, you read out the flavor text and everything. Like, mostly I've taken my flavor hits from things that I didn't expect them to trope that they did.
Okay.
And the thing that I like about Seven Dwarves is that there was a card back in Innistrad, Triskaidekaphobia, and it had lots of different. So the artist managed to get sets of 13 into the artwork.
13 stones and a
13
half.
stones in the hearth, 13 blood drips, 13 planks on the floor, and I don't think there were
Hooks
13 sets of 13.
No.
What I love about Seven Dwarves is there are 7 sets of item in the artwork.
Sure.
Beyond the actual dwarves themselves, there are 7 sleepers in the rail that's below him. There are 7 doors in the far side in the backgrounds. There are 7 lights along the along the background pathway. There's like a pathway that's going on behind him. There are 7 pickaxes and other tools that are around. There are 7 sacks, 7 torches, and 7 counterweights to make a total of 7 different sets of 7. Which that makes me happy. I mean, I don't necessarily. I'm sure you're about to go on an Andy rant about it.
So after I go for my number 1, I'm going to deconstruct why Seven Dwarfs is easily the worst Flavour card in the set.
I mean, I'm sure that's a fact, not an opinion. Sure.
Yeah, sure.
What I like is the fact they managed to actually squeeze in 7 sets of 7 in, and they clearly do try to push these. And yes, it's a little bit hammy, but with Triskaidekaphobia, they clearly show that the people like that.
Okay, sure. Well, Triskaidekaphobia was a clever card, and Seven Dwarfs. Okay, my number 1 pick is Tempting Witch. 2 in a black, creature, human, warlock. When Tempting Witch enters the battlefield, create a food token, and then you can tap for 2, sacrifice food, target player loses 3 life. So it's very much the same as Bog Naughty,
but in a different swing.
In a very much of a different swing, because it's target player. The Tempting Witch is the witch trope that permeates through. The card art has a witch with the apple from Snow White, but it could very easily be the witch from any of the Hansel and Gretel stories, anything like that.
And I think they deliberately tried to put it in between,
absolutely.
Not identifying it to one specific story, because they're not telling specific stories, they're setting a plane. They're creating a world. Yeah, incredible art as well by Mila Pesic as well, like with the baby's hands. Yeah, with the hands coming out. Yeah,
it's just, I mean, for me, this represents for me in this set the idea that they have taken things that could be potentially hammy, like the food tokens, and they've taken tropes which they could do 1,000 witches from all different stories, and they've managed to condense them and focus them, and it's just become a great set.
But it's the same thing. Like, I like that. I mean, we're talking a bit about where things fall flat, but the Irencrag feat is an amazing card because it's not actually depicting someone pulling a sword from a stone in the same cliche way we've seen before. It's not copying a trope that's already been done. It's reimagining it in a way that makes sense for magic. And that looks way more impressive in Irencrag feat than I've seen in any other representation of a sword being taken out of a stone. And I would be super pumped after doing that. That'd be super hype. Whereas if you just go over and pull a sword out of the stone, then it doesn't necessarily feel quite so good. Yeah, sure.
Right, I'm going to move on to some of the things that didn't really make it in this set, because I think it is worth pointing out that there are certain things that did fall flat for this set in general.
Obviously, this is from all of this is from our point of view.
But... Well, I think this is from our point of view, but also I definitely think that this is stuff which, if it was an intended choice by Wizards of the Coast,
maybe it's not
the right one.
Yet,
firstly, I'm just going to talk about Seven Dwarves.
Yeah, go ahead.
Nathan's number 1 pick, Seven Dwarves, is the worst card in the set. Fact. The fact that you've picked a card that we've just spoken about, how they didn't call the cards the thing that they are of. It's Curious Pair, not Hansel and Gretel. And then you call a dwarf card Seven Dwarves.
Yeah, but they're not the Seven Dwarves.
Are you kidding me?
In the artwork, do any of them look like Dopey? Do any of them like Sleepy? Are any of them bashful? No, they're not.
So many people want dwarves to be a viable thing, they got them in Kaladesh. No, I'm sorry.
7 of them.
It is so hammy. So this set is basically Meme the Gathering as well as being Seb McKinnon the Gathering, and that is viable and that is palatable because a lot of them are clever. Seven Dwarves is so ham-fisted. It's so unbelievably a meme that it actually makes me a little bit sick.
Stuck on the name, you didn't even look at the artwork. What are they digging in? Is it a salt mine, do you reckon? Are they digging down a salt mine?
Couldn't give a crap. Couldn't. I don't care, alright? It's awful.
I'm tasting salt.
It's so bad.
See, this is your first example of how Andy Man has very
look, the flip side of this is you look at something like Gingerbrute, which is an incredible card for this set flavour-wise, because it's clever in what it's doing. I don't want to talk about Gingerbrute because we could do about an hour on Gingerbrute because I know how good it is. Seven Dwarfs is the antithesis of that. It's awful. I hate it. It's everything wrong with this set.
You're allowed to hate things.
All right, okay. Moving on, because I've got a little bit. My blood pressure is. My doctor has told me not to talk about Sweven Dwarves. So
or Nagas.
So I want to talk about. I want to talk about story issues that I've had when it comes to relationship with the cards. I don't want to go on for too long about it, but I do think it's worth picking up. And it's a small point, and I think it is a bit nitpicky, but I do think it's relevant, is the fact that we've spoken about in this set that they have tried to not necessarily spoil the story, but still have story elements in the cards and have them nice and strong.
Yeah.
Perfect. Why then do they have The Wilded Quest by Kate Elliott? Fantastic. And they have characters in The Wilded Quest that have clear analogues in the card set, but are not the same characters. What breakdown? So the example I'm going to use before we jump into it is on the cards. You have the uncommon blue knight. They did a cycle of legendary knights. The blue one is Sir Eleonora the Discerning. In the story, there is a blue Vantress law mage, Vantress being the blue realm,
the blue
court called Law Mage Elowin. Even the name sounds the same. The card for Sir Eleonora is that basically it's harder to cast spells that target them. Elowin in the story is a law mage that has been hexed, so that hexes and spells don't affect her, allowing her to go further into the wilds.
Clearly the same person.
The blue card also draws you cards.
Yeah.
Eleonora is a law mage. It's the same character, and yet for some reason we don't get them. And not only do we not get those characters being the same, there are great characters on the cards that have no bearing in the story. Rankle, the Black Fairy legendary, is... I know exactly what Rankle's about. I would love to have seen a story, and maybe it's because I know what he's about from the cards, they didn't include him.
Yeah.
But it just seems there's a disconnect.
Well, this is where not having the Enchanted Realms is sometimes a bad thing, because you could have 7 to 10 different distinct stories that were completely isolated sometimes. They didn't have to be part of the arc of what they were saying. And there might have been way too many characters to be able to especially for someone like Rankle. Because if you look at Alayla from the Battle Bonds, she's supposed to be like the Maleficent analogue, because she's...
How would you know that?
Exactly. And the point, I guess... It feels like maybe they dropped the ball with the Blue Legends, of where there was maybe a mistranslate of the name or something, because it does feel like it's so close.
But none of them appear in the story, and they all have analogues. Also, in the Wilded Quest, we pretty much go to most of the courts, although we don't actually stick with one of them very long.
Yeah.
But we don't have Embreth, the Red Court. There is absolutely nothing in the story which is relevant for Embreth, and that is a massively missed opportunity. Yeah. Look, my basically my big problem with it is that if you want to start tying in the Magic stories in a big, tangible way to the cards, no, you don't have to have every legendary in the story, because then the book would be 1,000 pages long.
Yeah.
But I think if you're going to have creatures and humans and all different kinds of characters in the book, and you have an analogue in the card game, what does it cost you to marry them up? It doesn't cost you anything.
That's fair. I guess they might also argue then that they want to create an artificial diversity of where, of course you've seen this particular character, but then there's also other ones, and it's like, it's fine.
I don't like it.
I don't care about these other characters, because I've only been talking and listening and reading about this character. Yeah. So why not give me this character in a card?
Okay.
I mean, also it might be difficult now that we've gone to a single set structure, that you might not have enough... an undefined set structure. We might not have enough time to tell all the story from all the characters we get in one set, in one book.
That is very true, and I do appreciate that. It just seemed like a massively missed opportunity to me, and I kind of hope they rectify it.
Yeah, otherwise I don't think there was too much that they fudged up between the two.
No, sure.
One of my things that annoys me a little bit is that you get Garrick, Return of the Wild Speaker, and outside of the book you don't actually really know how, why, or what.
And also, that card, Return of the Wild Speaker, doesn't really represent what happens to him in the
No,
book.
I mean, I think, well, this is where a couple of the Flavour misses are where, in a top-down set, sometimes you're going to miss.
Maybe used as an actual misdirect as well.
Yeah, because I have down that True Love's Kiss is a bit of a miss, because even though because it's an exile target artifact or enchantment and you draw a card. And whereas really the translation into the story is that it fixes the artification or the enchantment. It brings them back to life. It doesn't cremate them.
Sure.
And that's what True Love's Kiss feels like in a card, because they needed a card that served the function of exiling an enchantment or an artifact, because every limited format needs that. but then you didn't need to add the True Love's Kiss to that necessarily because it doesn't directly synonymize.
Sure.
And in the same fashion, there might be, other cards like Return of the World Speaker, where the drawing cards equal to its power doesn't necessarily feel like it. The overrun ability doesn't necessarily feel like it. But both those things together, it's almost like these are two really good big green effects. And we haven't had either of them in a while. We haven't had the draw cards since the heroes are the +2/+2 reach, trample, and you draw cards equal to the amount of damage dealt or something from Theros. And then obviously overrun hasn't been around for a little while either. And it might just feel a little bit like, hey, here's our Green Walker back, and here's the two big green spells that you like.
Sure.
So it feels maybe it's a bit more of maybe instead of a direct flavor win, it's a little bit more tongue in cheek. It's a little bit more representational.
Sure, and obviously there's room for that. I think one thing which maybe we don't have time to go too deep into was maybe the missed opportunity with Questing Beast.
Yeah, but that's again like you get to a point where certain cards need to have a certain functionality.
So maybe that was a legendary that they put in for the functionality for the standard limited environment, rather than using it as something. They
want that character to be in the set in the same way that you have the lurker in the lock.
Yeah, sure.
Like you want certain characters to be represented, but maybe you need them to also serve a certain function. It's obviously where play design will probably come in. And if you look at Questing Beast in this current standard environment, it is a pillar that's holding up against other archetypes that otherwise might run rampant.
Sure.
So they might see that card and then go, well, you've given us this card. It does flavorfully work, but we need to tweak this, we need to tweak this and tweak this to make it playable and work. And then those few little notes pull it further, like just that little bit further away from what we look for, which is synergy and between the card and the mechanics and the flavour of it.
I just think because 3 heads on the card art for the Questing Beast had 3 keywords, 3 abilities. 2 of those 3 abilities, those static abilities, referenced itself.
Yeah.
It didn't give other cards things, and it is the Questing Beast.
Yeah, considering it's the one that gives you the quest, at no point does it feel like it's... Especially since you've got creatures in the set that already go on an adventure. It doesn't interact with creatures that go on an adventure, even though it is the creature
that's
that
sending
gives
them on an adventure.
The creatures the adventure. So in that way, you could argue that it doesn't actually follow the trope. It kind of is lost a little.
I think it's worth noting that a lot of our nitpicks and a lot of our downness on this set does seem to be from a very niche-y, nitpicky state, which I think is actually a very good place for this set to be in.
I feel like Vorthosians typically are going to be more nitpicky because we're more... We're typically going to look on the bright side, but we do also, when things don't quite get there or they get so close, it can be so frustrating.
Yeah, sure.
Because especially now they're really, really pushing to have this story and gameplay synergy. Like it's annoying when they do miss the mark when they seem to be doing so well. So yeah, they might be nitpicks, but typically I feel like the nitpicks are worth looking into because they're also going to be the kind of things that Wizards are going to be looking at trying to better in the future, and they'll also be the things that they take feedback from.
Sure. Overall, however, I think this set has been an absolute massive success.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a joy to play. The storylines have been absolutely solid, and I would encourage anyone, if you want a bit of a palate cleanser from the War of the Spark, Gatewatch era, moving forwards, this is a very strong one for Magic.
Like it's a really good story to read. It's a really nice world to indulge in, and as we say, this is going to be the beginning of a big arc. So you will probably end up coming back to this if you're someone who's invested in the story, regardless, because it will be the chapter 1, so to speak.
Oh, I hope so. All right, I think we're going to wrap up there, guys. Thank you very much for listening. If you've been listening along with us, like, share, and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. However that allows you to do that. Thank you very much for listening. This has been Magic the Flavouring.
Until next time.